and welcome to the first of a three-part series of videos on understanding fatigue and burnout. So the content of this series, video 1, we will look at the business case. We will highlight your organisation's responsibilities and how it can impact you and your team. Video 2 is all about fatigue, the types of fatigue, what causes it, risk factors, best practices that your organisation can put in place. And video 3, we will look closer at burnout, the risks and how it impacts your employees and organisation. So what is fatigue? I'll talk more about this in the second of the series of videos. So fatigue is the decline in mental and/or physical performance that results from prolonged exertion, lack of quality sleep and the disruption of the internal body clock. So what is burnout? And we will look at this in more detail in the third video. Burnout is a state of physical, emotional and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. So why is it important to have an awareness of fatigue and burnout? We know that there's a close link between work-related stress and burnout and fatigue. It's important that employers have an understanding of how fatigue and burnout can impact their staff and their organisation. So let's look at the human performance curve. The human performance curve describes how individuals function under differing degrees of pressure. We all have the same stages of the curve, but the factors, level of exposure and duration that causes us to move through each of the varied stages, it varies significantly from person to person, and so it's a very, very individual thing. So when there's no pressure or incentive to fulfill a task, motivation and performance is low. Research has found that as pressure increases, so does performance, until it reaches an optimal performance level. As you can see, this is where we begin to stretch ourselves. Now, a good example of that stretch might be the finance branch coming to the end of a financial year. The pressure is heightened, pace of work may be greater and more intense, but we know it's for a short period of time, and you know it comes every year and it will pass. However, if that pressure lasts for a significant amount of time, or passes the optimum point, then performance can begin to decrease. And this is where fatigue, stress, and eventually burnout will occur. Continued pressures often lead to ill health and individuals being unable to function at work, causing presenteeism, which is the reduction of productivity that occurs when employees come to work but function at less than full capacity. In fact, one 2019 survey estimated that presenteeism costs the UK economy £15.1 billion every year, making it nearly double the cost of absenteeism. So why worry about fatigue and burnout and work-related stress? Why should an organisation look at it? Well, there's three main reasons. The first one is the legal duty. The second one that we're going to look at is your moral responsibility. And the third is the financial cost that it has to your organisation. So while there's no specific legislation that mentions work-related stress, we know that under the Health and Safety at Work Order, Northern Ireland, 1978, employers have a duty to ensure, so far as reasonably practical, the health and safety of their employees at work. Article 4 of the Health and Safety at Work Northern Ireland Order 1978 places a duty of care on employers that they must take all reasonable precautions to protect the health of their employees. And that's not just physical health, that's the psychological health as well. The Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations in Northern Ireland 2000, Regulation 3, places a duty of employers to risk assess, and that risk assessment also includes mental health risks. And the Working Time Regulations Northern Ireland 2016 details the maximum amount of hours that employees should work. These are designed to regulate long working hours which put workers at risk of injury or ill health. So now looking at the moral responsibility. And under the moral responsibility, the first thing we look at is health and pre-existing medical conditions. We know that work-related stress, burnout and fatigue can exacerbate pre-existing medical conditions and is linked as a possible causation factor for other health problems such as heart disease and cancer. The next thing we're going to look at under moral responsibility is looking at negative coping strategies. So individuals who are suffering from work-related stress, fatigue and burnout often adopt maladaptive coping strategies. Such strategies may look like alcohol or drug dependency, where perhaps one glass of wine and after a stressful day at work can lead to 2 glasses and then maybe a bottle every night until that gets out of control. Other maladaptive coping strategies can include things that we may not think of, like online shopping. So maybe after a stressful day at work, we go straight online, start buying stuff, and before we know it, we've got financial difficulties as well. So then we have the societal health. There is a responsibility on organisations to contribute to the health of society. And ultimately, this is mutually beneficial, as a healthier society will make for a healthier and more successful business environment. And finally, the historical context of moral responsibility. Moral responsibility for looking after our staff is not a new thing. In the late 1800s, large companies were looking after their staff by doing things like creating libraries for staff, providing housing close to their work environment, improved dining and welfare facilities, and also included things like gyms and swimming pools. Now we'll look at the financial costs. So many of us will know some of the direct financial costs, such as sick pay, loss of production, reasonable adjustments we may need to put in place to get staff members back to work, rehabilitation, paying overtime whenever people have been off sick, bringing in agency workers, and maybe having to pay fines for if staff take cases against employers. And again, insurance premiums can go up because of that. And then some of the indirect costs, which we may not consider just the same, but look like the staff morale. So if a lot of team members are off with work-related stress, fatigue, burnout, then the other members have to pick up the cost. So the staff morale starts to dip. Remedial action following investigations can be costly. Staff diverted from normal duties. Compliance with enforcement notices. And again, staff retention and staff recruitment can be very expensive. And again, one thing that we may not always take into consideration is the reputational damage that it can do to your organisation. So just to summarise what we've looked at in that first part of the 3-part series is the definitions of fatigue and burnout, the human performance curve, the legal duties within your organisation, the moral responsibility, and the financial costs. So thank you very much for watching part 1 of the Understanding Fatigue and Burnout series. If you have any further questions or queries, please do not hesitate to contact HSENI's Mental Wellbeing at Work Advisory Service. You can do this by emailing the team at stress@hseni.gov.uk or by telephoning us on 0800 0320 121. Please check out the second part of this series of 3 videos where I will take a closer look at fatigue and the impact that has within your organisation.